Grew up in housing commission. We experienced an immense amount of financial stress and strain. By the age of 8 years old, I was the man of the house. Addicted to video games, withering away, eating Cocoa Pops, baggy eyes, really weak and frail, having like 4 wanks a day over pornography, like just completely depressed. And I'm just like, where am I, man? The world is much bigger than this little area that I was born into, and that programmed me with whatever was the most known belief systems at that time. Laughter is healing. It's healing. When you laugh, your body goes into this like, it's like this release of energy. You feel good afterwards. I learned what it feels like to be actually stressed. Like I felt really alive. I was like, wow, this is a part of me that I haven't accessed much before. Why? Because a lot of the stress I've experienced before has been self-inflicted psychological stress. Anger can be used to set boundaries. But if a child hasn't seen that and everything's negative with anger, well, then you're passing that down to them. When you can understand yourself a lot more, you can stand yourself a lot more. When you can stand yourself, then you can then start to share that connection that you formed with yourself by connecting with all these other people more authentically. So everyone listening, you could very well be ready to create that shift and change in your life, so it doesn't need to be passed on to the next generation.
It's interesting that when I looked in the back end of our YouTube channel, and it says 95% of you that watch it frequently haven't yet hit the subscribe button. So I have a small favor to ask. If you've ever watched this channel and enjoyed the content, please, can I ask you a small favor? Please hit the subscribe button. It honestly helps this channel more than I can explain. And I promise you, if you do that, I will return the favor. We will make this show better and better. That's a promise that I'm willing to make if you press the subscribe button. Do we have a deal? For people who don't know who you are, Charles, what's the context that myself and the listener need to know about you to better understand the man that's sitting in front of me today?
Okay, the context of me. All right. Who am I? So I am someone who is very creative. I just love like some of the thoughts and ideas I get in my mind. It's just so fascinating. It's something that I've always had, and now I feel like I'm really stepping into that in this path that I'm on at the moment and learning how to channel and share that with others. So some ways that I do that is what I do for work, and big part of my purpose is I support people through coaching services, mainly using shadow work as a modality to support people in them becoming better versions of themselves. I'm the co-founder of an online community called Triber. So Triber, it's an online community that facilitates inner child work and shadow work. We've got different programs that we use to facilitate that. We've built a beautiful community of people like-minded that are all on that journey together that want some support. The main approach with that is going toward healing in a way that isn't too clinical, in a sense where people are just going to be there talking to a talk therapist, just unloading and venting and going in loops of the narrative that they're stressed out about without any in-depth healing and transformation occurring, or the oversubscription of pills and medicine as a way to temporarily resolve symptoms. So some people typically come to us after going through a path of that as a way to heal. And also people that have gone down a path of it being overly spiritual and woo-woo, where people are going to places that are telling them to, you have to, delete your ego, and it's, that's the bad part of you, and you can never judge, and that's low vibe, and all this sort of stuff. That again, when people are trying to better themselves, they may fall into a trap of just making things worse, really. But, then that in itself is part of the journey before you can redirect yourself towards, now this is, a better path that I'm on to discover who I really am. So our format is slightly somewhere in the middle. It's a bit more grounded. It's a space where people can just be themselves. It is shadow work after all, so we really encourage people to explore all the aspects of their psyche. So it's a very interesting, curious space where people get to explore and learn about themselves to heal and transform. I also organize retreats. So a few times a year we go to our Triber retreats, and it's essentially all that captured in a weekend getaway filled with fun and also, the element of seriousness that's applied to healing as well. So we do like workshops, we have tribal parties. We've got a retreat coming up in January. It's our summer retreat in the Hunter Valley. So I organize stuff like that. I'm also the co-founder of Bondi Sunset Music. So it's a in-person live drumming event that happens in Bondi Beach every week. It became really popular during COVID. People were super lonely and isolated and stressed out, and talking again about the Australian culture, there wasn't really much for people to do to really connect with their body, themselves, and other people. A lot of people were experiencing high amounts of stress, depression, even suicidal thoughts, and actually going to that level of taking their lives. It definitely increased at that time. So Bondi Sunset Music was really an organic organism that just formed at that time as a way to naturally deal with the symptom of stress that people collectively were experiencing. So it grew very fast. It went viral all over the news because we were all dancing and having fun during COVID, and we're all spreading the virus and all that sort of stuff. And I had to have meetings with the police and the local. I was on Channel 9 News and all this sort of stuff. Like, hey, we're just a bunch of hippies just having fun, just wanting to dance, So that was good. That created a really cool community that we're still running today. Now we're doing gigs. I did a gig recently in Liverpool, Western Sydney for the Latin Festival. So that's really cool, kind of giving back. So that's all the stuff that I do and organize. But yeah, just me and my essence. I'm very creative. I'm very curious. I love traveling. I love exploring. I love history. I love nature. I love psychology. I'm very interested in learning about the darker elements of ourselves and the outside world, but from a curious lens to understand how it all works in and blends together as this entire, organism that we're living in life, this universe that we're experiencing, and learning how to perceive things from in a perpetual state of love, but then also understanding that the way that I may express my love may come across as differently sometimes. So it's not a complete I am a full loving force and being. Sometimes the love is a strong no. So bit about me.
Man, I can feel the passion in what you just spoke about. Then I'm quite interested in what led you to becoming this man and going down that path. Take me back to your teenage years. I've seen that you described it as a dark period within your life, and you described yourself as an angry, judgmental soul. You lacked confidence. You experienced depression. What was that period of your life like, and how did you kind of come out the other side?
So it's a typical experience that any healer will go through. They'll go through a point in time where the darkness consumes them that much, it becomes that dense where their only opportunity is to face it and then find the light, so to say, a light that once you can find, you can then begin to share it with others. And that's a continual journey that we've gone through life, and it comes in stages and phases. My first one erupted from an experience that I think a lot of men are going through now, which is growing up in a fatherless home. So that was my core wound of not having a father figure there growing up when I was young. By the age of 8 years old, I was the man of the house with a house full of women. So 3 sisters and my mum. So there was definitely a lack of a strong masculine presence growing up, and that led to a lot of confusion for me, and it led me trying to seek it and find representations of it as a way to compensate for the lack of guidance and support and security that was there in my life at that time, whether it be physical security. Our house, got robbed, for example, after my dad left, and it's this innate fear within me. It's okay, well, if we get robbed again, who's going to be the one to have to defend this house as a 10-year-old kid? These are thoughts that I'm having, So it forces you to really grow up faster. Not only that, lack of financial security. So we grew up in housing commission. After my dad left, we experienced an immense amount of financial stress and strain. My mum's living week to week, always on the phone talking to government housing bills, always stressed out. And this created this worldview where it's just we don't have enough, and just this deep fear and insecurity about my position in this world. And then a lot of those things would lead me to comparing myself to others, a deep resentment towards people that had better lives than me, victimizing myself. Obviously, the pain wasn't being addressed. I didn't know how to. So coping mechanisms at that time used was I I was addicted to video games. I used to spend like 16 hours a day playing World of Warcraft and playing games on my computer, just like withering away, eating Cocoa Pops in between, baggy eyes, like really weak and frail, and just like it'd be like beautiful day outside and I'll be in the dark room with the blinds closed, like just completely depressed, just having like 4 wanks a day over pornography, just diving deep into the darkness of porn, which will only take you down a path where it just gets more and more and more and more fucked up with the content that you watch as a way to get that same hit. And this is something that isn't spoken about much with men. I feel like there's a lot of shame around it, and I'll put my hand up now to say I've seen some fucked up shit in pornography, and it's just like this unconscious driver that just takes you there. It's like a drug, and now it's on our phones and it's there at our every whim. We can access it, and it's so that's something that I struggled with as well. Very angry. My nickname in high school was aggro. I went to anger management. I was involved in some physical altercations. Just like we're in Western Sydney now. Grew up in a similar area, early childhood, Bankstown, teenage years, Burwood. It's a bit rough. There's street fights after school. There's people carrying knives, people, young men associating themselves with different groups, different gangs as a way to be respected, feel accepted, turn to other people as a way to give them something that may be lacking where they're growing up. And for me, it was like this overcompensation for my lack of security within myself, for me trying to be this man that I feel like I had to be as a way to protect my mum and sisters growing up. And that meant I had to be more tough, more dominant, whatever it may be, put on this persona. So that's something that I did as well. And one thing that happened, there was a couple of different things that happened that really started to turn my life at that time during my teenage years. One of them was my mum couldn't afford the internet anymore. Okay, so I couldn't play my games anymore.
Been heartbreaking.
It was. I was like, So I had to like go outside, and I'm like, what is this world, man? Is that a tree? So that was one thing. Another thing was I got bashed on the street by a group of 7 older guys from Parramatta. Basically, they were hunting down one of my mates. We were both like 15, 16. They hunted us down after we got off the bus. They like timed it and they ambushed us and we got dropped. We got annihilated. And I remember after that, I was like, geez, if I can't defend myself against these guys, how am I going to defend my family if we get robbed again? And growing up hearing that my sisters were kind of being approached by seedy men on the street and shit like that used to infuriate me so much. So it just again fueled this sense that I had to like be someone that wouldn't go anywhere near like my territory. Like don't even step in here, So after that, I started boxing. I started training. And the initial motivation was to be able to defend myself better. But then that became like a healthy outlet for me to like somatically express and release like this pent up anger that I had at that time, which is so good. I still box now. I'm actually way more into it now than I was back then. But that was just like a kind of start that got me in the door. Training and started doing something good for myself. So if any man is listening now, if you're not training, you have to start training. Like without a doubt, it is one of the best ways to release energy in your body, just to feel better about yourself, build up some confidence that you're doing something positive for yourself, seeing progress, results. It doesn't have to be purely based on your physical appearance, although that's great as well, to look good, to like what you see. Obviously, if it's not perpetuated so heavily based on the programming of the fitness industry that tells you got to be 4% body fat all year round, fuck that shit off. Just be realistic with it, okay? Just looking healthier and more capable and stronger within yourself. But learning a skill as well, something where you can really channel that competitive side of your masculine energy. So combat sports are great for that, boxing, jiu-jitsu, any other sport for that matter. So that was like my first step into doing something positive for me and moving forward. It was like the first thing on my self-development journey. And then that was all physical based. Yeah, there's emotional, mental aspects to it too. Like, come on, you got to be disciplined. Let's go. But the emotional side of things hit me hard when I was in my early 20s and I experienced like my first heartbreak. And it was just like, what is this feeling in my body? And it was like no matter what I did, it wouldn't go away.
In your room listening to depressing music?
Bro, oh my God. I remember when we broke up, I actually shared on my Facebook that song, Good Day, and I hope you had the time of your life. I remember sharing that song. So that, like, I was trying to train and work, and it was good. It motivated me to do that, but it wasn't solving the problem. So if you're a man dealing with some like deeper issues, it's like your head is racing with thoughts, you're feeling this like deep discomfort in your body, as much as training, working, doing these positive things for yourself, making money, growing your business, improving your body, all this stuff is great. It's not going to resolve the deeper issues that are going on behind the front that you're expressing in your general day-to-day life. Like, you have to go deep within yourself. And that's something that I had to do then. And it all spurred from me traveling at that point just to get my mind off it. I decided to start traveling. But then what I found, I'm in the middle of the Amazon. I'm in the middle of a desert in the Middle East. I'm in Africa. I'm like in an orphanage. I'm in the mountains of Peru. Like, I just started traveling everywhere, and it gave me time to like process my mind, my thoughts, challenge my beliefs. Like, I was seeing all these tribal people and people in villages with their families, their kids, old people living in the same homes and areas as their families, great-grandmother with their great-grandchild. Like, just this beautiful experience, nature, animals. And I'm just like, where am I, man? The world is much bigger than this little area that I was born into, and that programmed me with whatever was the most known belief systems at that time. Like, it started to expand out, and that's when I really started to become a lot more curious.
What are some of the biggest lessons you've received from traveling? Because as you just mentioned, like, the biggest life lessons come from going out of your comfort zone and putting yourself in different environments to experience what they're like. Because then you question yourself. You question, well, these are my beliefs now. Are they actually true? Is what society's telling me how to live my life true? Because once you go into other parts of the world, and I haven't personally done it myself, it's something I want to do, but I watch a lot of YouTube on people that go to all these remote countries and stuff, and I love that shit because you can see how they live, and in our eyes, they got nothing. But in their eyes, they got everything. They got their culture, they got their family, and they're happy. And it's like, we can take a note from their book for sure. Like, just not overcomplicating our life. We're so focused on the hustle and bustle, making the money, all that stuff. Come back to the core of what a human is love, connection, family, culture, all that stuff. You'll be so much more happier.
Yeah, bro. I feel ya. All right, some lessons that I've learned while traveling. Okay, first of all, one of the lessons I learned is what it feels like to be actually stressed. Okay, so I've experienced a couple moments that were quite threatening to my physical safety, where my body got into like this automatic fight or flight response, and feeling that it's kind of like, I felt really alive. I was like, wow, this is a part of me that I haven't accessed much before. Why? Because a lot of the stress I've experienced before has been self-inflicted psychological stress. Okay, that's the first thing. And that's what I've thought stress is, which it is, but this is what the stress response truly is and what it was designed for. Okay, so I've been through a few experiences like that. One, being stalked by a leopard when I was in Kenya, camping on a campground. Funny story, I was actually with this woman from Switzerland, and she was, attractive. I'm on this camping tour in the middle of Africa. I'm 26 years old. Yeah, man, I'm traveling the world, dude. And then it's like nighttime. It gets dark quick. Like 9 p.m., it's just pitch black. We're in the middle of this like wilderness area. The tents are all around. During the day, there's like warthogs, baboons, and like little gazelles coming up to our campsite. So it's like proper wild, right? And at nighttime, well, the predators emerge. And we were sitting by the fire. Everyone went to sleep. I'm really horny. It's Africa. In the background, you can hear that song. Can you feel the love tonight? And I'm just there going, man, all right. One of my childhood dreams is about to happen over here. Hey, what's up, girl from Switzerland? And anyway, maybe like 30 to 40 meters away, there was a huge lake. And in that lake, there are hippopotamuses. And every like 5 minutes, because they're all sleeping, they're making their noises, but every 5 minutes, I don't know, or so, you'd hear like a hippopotamus making like this whoosh noise. I don't know what it's doing. It's like pushing water out. I don't know what it's doing, making this big noise. And it's a bit kind of frightening because hippopotamuses are like the most aggressive animal in all of Africa, and they kill more humans than all the other animals combined. So I wasn't going to look at it and be like, that's a cute little hippo. Like I was there going proper like flashlight, no hippos around. All right, we're good. We're sweet. Back to smooching. So that happened a couple of times. Hippo made a couple of noises. Then on the fourth noise, I shined my flashlight and I saw two eyes reflecting back at the flashlight. And I'm like, okay, this is sus.
I'm not horny anymore.
I'm not horny anymore. All the blood went from my genitalia area and it just went straight into my heart and into my muscles and activate stress response. So, and before this whole tour, we had our African tour guide. And, you know, at the beginning of the tour, we're all there just like having fun. Like, yeah, like, ha, ha, ha. Hey, man, what happens if a lion is like coming up to us? And he's like giving us a full rundown. He's like, if you see a lion, you must stare at the lion in the eyes and you walk back slowly until you find help. Like he's full giving us a rundown. Like you don't run. If you run, you're gone. Like you got to walk back slow because these lions, they're used to like other predators and elephants and rhinos, and they know if something is kind of standing its ground, walking away, that they have to kind of proceed with a bit of caution. You know what I mean? But if you run, they know straight away, okay, this is prey. So that's all you can do. So I saw these lights shining, these eyes shining through the light of my flashlight, and it started zigzagging towards us like this. And I was like, fuck, okay, that's when I knew. And this is all like a few seconds, but it's automatic response. We both stood up. I like held her hand. She started hyperventilating, going, and I go, shut up. Like I just shut the fuck up. And then I started walking back slowly and it started coming up to us. And then like a few meters behind us, there was like a tent. It wasn't our tent. There was like a Portuguese couple in there or something. We got to the tent. She opened the tent. I threw her in there. I remember diving in. It was like this moment where it was like slow motion. I was like, no. And I anyway jumped in. We were in this tent like breathing heavily for like 20 minutes. Every now and again, I'm kind of going like this to make sure there's nothing around. After 20 minutes, I'm like, all right, we got to get out of here. Got out of the tent. Her tent was very close by, so she went in there. My tent was like in between a big gap where it was just like dirt and darkness. So I had to like walk through this gap to my tent. It's probably like 20 meters. And it was dark and I was like looking at my flashlight, like going like this everywhere. And then halfway through, one of the hippos made that noise again. It went whoosh and I was like, ah! And then I remember screaming and I just ran. I bolted to my tent and I dived in. And as I dived in, I landed on top of this like British school teacher dude I was sharing the tent with, like this full nerdy guy. He's like, for God's sake, Charles, what are you doing? And I was like, bro, there's a fucking animal out there, man. It's trying to eat me. Anyway, we told the guide the next day about it. Everyone was talking about it, and he basically said it was a leopard because I told him how high it was, the eyes, the colors, and all this sort of shit. So just like going through that, I was like, okay, this is a valid time for me to be stressed. I understand what it's like to be stressed and to just let your body do its thing when you're stressed. Me now in a social situation where someone may potentially judge me for like saying something, like that's not the same thing. That's my mind constructing like a worst case scenario that if I say something, I may get judged. And if I'm judged, well, then that means I'm not good enough and I'm unworthy and they may abandon me and then I'm going to be alone forever and ever and ever. Like this is how our ego constructs like meaning out of, for example, being judged or criticized or disagreed with. And this is something that's so prevalent in today's day and age where people get triggered out of thin air for absolutely anything. Why? Maybe because our ancestors have literally come from that environment. being out in nature with predators everywhere and other tribes and the cold and, all these harsh environments, that they had to adapt by thinking negatively to things. They had to be hypersensitive and hypervigilant to it. But because of the advancements that we've made over the last, couple of centuries, especially the last century, maybe our brain hasn't completely adapted to the technology and the level of safety that we have. So we're just like constructing problems out of thin air because of how familiar it is for us to have problems. So that's one big thing I learned. And I had a couple other experiences driving on some of the world's most dangerous roads in Pakistan and on the border of Afghanistan, and proper huge drops kilometers down, driving up to this place and seeing cars that have fallen down and people there smoking ciggies, proper like mountain Pakistanis. These people look like, they have like green eyes and stuff, and it just smoke. And then me saying like, man, it was like raining last night, and in the mountains, whenever it rains, it's like high chances of landslides. So I'm like, maybe we shouldn't drive on one of the most dangerous roads in the world just after it's rained. This guy's looking at me. Bro, when you die, you die. When you die, nothing matters anymore. And I'm like, bro, this is how these people think. They're literally not scared of death. They're just in it. They're in life. They're just present. They're here. And I'm like, okay, there's another thing I've learned there. And I've actually used that whenever it come to me. Like, I got interviewed by Channel 9, and I was like, chance of me getting like a $30,000 fine for organizing a party in Bondi Beach during COVID. It's enough for anyone to shit bricks before that. And I was like, bro, it's okay. You're like, just these little lessons I've learned that's been able to flick a switch in my mind, put me in a state that serves me better, be more confident, present, and grounded, and just go have a conversation and open up my heart, speak my truth, and do so in a way that's going to work out better for everyone. And it did, and everything's fine. So it's little things like that I've picked up through these travels, these trips, that's really helped me just navigate general day-to-day life. And it's from that I've really dived into studying it further and finding strategies and ways to support other people to having those same realizations through themselves. So they don't need to be in the middle of the mountains in Pakistan, or they don't need a leopard to be right in front of them for them to have that same realization. There's a way for us to access that wisdom that we all have inside of us through just diving deeper within ourselves.
When it comes to stress, as you mentioned, as a society, we connect all these negative connotations to anything that really pops up in our life. And you just mentioned there, someone doesn't have to go travel around the world and be in these dangerous situations to understand stress. What are some tools, what are some tactics that someone that can implement into their daily life to overcome the stress and deal with it a lot better?
One of the best things I can say is for people to understand that you have different parts of yourself. A lot of people get warped into this idea that this is me, I have one personality, this is the only way that I think, this is the only way that I am. That would be your conscious identity, the way that you identify yourself, otherwise known as your ego. We all have one, it's fine. But outside of that, we have other aspects of our psyche, ones that may be operating in certain contexts that don't serve us, like you're having a conversation with someone and you're noticing these thoughts going on in your head, and it's creating this like emotional stress response in your body. And even though logically you're like, everything's fine, everything's safe, it's still happening. You're still getting the thoughts. You're still getting those uncomfortable feelings in your body. It's affecting how you talk. You may be freezing up. You may not be socializing that much. You may kind of push yourself back, try and be small, and it's affecting how you socialize and connect with people. Despite you logically knowing that everything's fine, everything's safe, it's not enough to ground yourself to be more present, okay? And a lot of people maybe experience things like that, whether it's starting a business, procrastinating something. It's like logically you know what you got to do, but you're just not doing it. So my advice would be for people to be more curious to understand the parts of themselves that are in fear in that situation, that are in fear of taking action of something, that have resistance to go and, approach that chick on the street, that have resistance to go and, start that business. Like to explore the logic of those aspects of their psyche and to just seek to understand how different parts of them that they may not be completely consciously aware of now, how they think, how they feel, what their perspective of the world is, what their perspective of themselves is. With this, what you can do is you can start to connect with different parts of yourself. And then with that, once you understand them, you can then form a connection with them and learn how to navigate them whenever they arise. It's like if I've got a friend and I don't understand my friend, every time I'm with my friend and we go somewhere, let's say it's not just my friend, let's say it's someone who's in my team for life, and I'm dependent on this person that's in my team to be able to survive life. This friend, we're in a certain situation, this person in my team, and they're operating in a way that isn't supporting our main goal. Let's say they're freezing up, they're pushing themselves away, they're telling me not to do it. And I'm like, no, come on, like this is what we need to do. This is what we need to achieve. If I don't understand the logic of this person in my team, where they're coming from, where their feelings are coming from, their fears, their resistance, their doubts, I'm not going to be able to stand them. I'm going to be like, fuck off, go away. This person in my team, it's not someone I can just push away. They're still there, much like the parts of our psyche. We can try and push them and suppress them into the shadow, but they always emerge and they're always going to try and have their needs met. And a lot of people get caught up doing this to themselves a lot, trying to deny the existence of these insecurities and fears, trying to push them away using substances or various addictions. So if you can just first seek to understand these different parts of you, you can see where they're coming from. And then from that point of understanding, you can then learn how to navigate them, manage them in better ways to support your overall goals that you're trying to achieve. Much like this person in my team, if I'm like, that's why you have fear, because you're in fear of this happening and that may happen because it's happened before and you're just trying to protect me from it happening again. Okay, I get why you're creating this resistance and this doubt and like clogging up my throat to like say certain things, because when we were young, every time you spoke up, dad would absolutely demolish you and beat you. Like, I get why you have fear now talking in a social situation. Like, even though it's not the same situation, I get where you're coming from. What do you need now? Other part of you who's in fear and has insecurities, I just need some reassurance. I need to know that it's all going to be okay. I need support. I need you to anchor me into truth. Like, what's the truth of this situation right now? I just need you to not attack me, to not try and push me away and deny my existence. Like, I'm here. Okay, I see ya. I understand where you're coming from. I get that you're in fear of this situation happening again. I understand. Just showing some general compassion towards yourself, towards these feelings, giving them validation to exist in your body. You don't need to be at war with yourself so much. They're just feelings. They're just thoughts. It's not going to be the end of you. You can accept them. And then from that point, when you've given that part of you some validation, you've seen them, you can then redirect them toward what's going to be a better outcome for you. Like, hey, why don't we just try opening up a little bit and speaking, see how that goes. This can all be things that you can do internally within yourself through visualizations, through meditation. I've literally been in certain situations where I was like really stuck on something, and I sat into two different positions in the floor of my apartment and spoke to myself. I spoke to this different part of me. Every time I sat in this position, I was the scared part of me. Every time I was in this position, I was the curious part of me that was trying to understand him.
I'd love to have that on camera.
It's fascinating. I guide people all the time through guiding them on doing it with themselves. It's mind-blowing. People go out of there like, I can't believe I said that. I'm like, yeah, that part of you exists. It's there. And Carl Jung said something beautiful, and I might get this quote wrong, but he said, the best way to understand the darkness of other people is to understand the darkness within yourself. So if you can understand your own darkness, and when I say darkness, I don't mean like the evil parts of you, but there may be parts of you within your darkness that may exhibit some evil, sinister, malevolent traits, but just the parts of you that you've pushed away, that you refuse to deny are parts of you and are contrary to the persona that you show to the world. So if you can understand these other facets of yourself and you can shine a light on it and go, okay, I've got that there. Well, then whenever other people exude some of those same traits, you're like, I get that because I've got that same part of me too. And I can understand why they may be using it because I know why I've used my ones. So it allows you to be a lot more understanding for people whenever they're using, whether it's, it's like hard. It's like what's going on in the world right now. There's a lot of, there's war and killing and all this sort of stuff that's going on right now. It can be really traumatizing just not understanding how something like that can come into fruition, and for me, I think just understanding how and why different people individually may be operating in that way, whether you're a Hamas terrorist or you're an IDF soldier, whether you're a pilot dropping bombs on Gaza, whether you're a child in Gaza, whether you're someone who was killed by the Hamas terrorists or the civilians there. Like, I can get it. I can get how it's understandable, the motivation for every single one of the people that was in that whole collective organism that has orchestrated this entire situation. I can get how they all may have been thinking, how they all may have been feeling for this whole situation to be created right now.
It's an interesting place, like you're referring to, seeking to understand all the different points of views, not only within yourself, but within other people as well. And you see it on social media, and you probably see it too on some of the posts that you put up. You probably get a lot of negative comments. And within those comments, there's no critical thinking, no critical asking questions or anything. It's just straight out anger and hatred. And it gets me thinking, as a society, have we actually lost the ability to critically think?
That's a good question, but it's hard to say if we've lost it or not. I just think now there's a lot more things to critically think about that we are exposed to. Like, for example, now there's always been killings and war and destruction and genocides and massacres and ethnic cleansing, whatever. There's always been things like that that's happened throughout history, but I feel like we may have been more ignorant towards it. Why? Because the form of information that we would have received back, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years ago, you get a newspaper. That's the newspaper that you get. This is all the information that's in it. And that's what you read. That's what you see. Whereas now we're just like exposed to so much information and trying to filter through all that and trying to think critically about every single thing that's happening in the world right now. It can be exhausting, let alone trying to just live your own life at the same time.
Do you think it's overstimulating? So we're just going off emotions now?
Yeah, exactly. It's just like it uses up more energy trying to consciously understand situations and see what's behind it and look at it from a lens of where you're thinking more critically about it. I think people are just overly stressed, exhausted. I think a lot of these things bring up a lot of people's unresolved traumas. And therefore, when they're in that space, they're more likely to project. Like, I know me, if I was observing this situation that's going right now in the Middle East, the content 10 years ago, the type of content I would be sharing would be very different to what I'm sharing right now. Like, I know as a child of parents that fled a civil war in Lebanon, that whose ancestors have fought both Palestinians and Israelis, that has been born into a country where there's going to be a certain level of biases because of our own trauma and wounds that we've experienced by both Palestinians and Israelis, where thousands have died. And then, of course, understanding how just being in that space, I can understand how being a child of that environment can cultivate a worldview where I can definitely be a lot more emotionally fueled. I can definitely be more likely to point fingers with hatred. And I used to experience that. There was a period in my life where I hated Muslims, where I hated Jews. There was a point in time when I was younger, due to my own traumas that I experienced, the traumas that my family experienced and the things that they told me. And then seeing that continue on a larger scale in the world, whether I'm looking at, terrorists beheading people, beheading Christians in Iraq, ISIS or whatever, or Israelis demolishing a Palestinian home, it would bring up this sense of anger that I had. But I've had to go on my own journey to heal that ancestral trauma so that I can see it more objectively, so that when there's an isolated incident or various incidents, I'm not so quick to generalize and project that an entire group of people. And it first started with me healing a lot of those ancestral wounds that I had with Muslims, because as a Lebanese Christian, our country, the militia factions within Lebanon went to war with the Muslim factions, and you hear the stories from my family and all the traumas that they've experienced. It just paints this picture in your own mind. You're just a young sponge. You just take it in. So a big part of me healing a lot of that was actually traveling to Muslim countries. I traveled to a lot of them, and I started to understand them, see them a lot more, and see, they're just like me. They're just people. Just seeing them as fellow human beings, and deconditioning a lot of those preconceived notions and biases that I had. And the same thing has been the case with me and Jews as well. Not generalizing and healing my own traumas that perpetuates this like worldview of anti-Semitism. Just as it did before with Islamophobia. These are the terms that are getting spoken out about now, and it's put me in a space now where feel like, anyway, I mean, there's been a lot of progress, and I feel like this is the work that everyone, especially in that region, needs to do, because we've all experienced it in our own way, especially from that region. Whether you're Israeli, Jewish, whether you're Arab, Palestinian, whether you're Muslim, Christian, it doesn't matter. Like you're going to experience your own conditioning as a result of what's occurred over centuries during that time. And it's up to all of us to do a lot of that deeper healing work so that we don't see things and then get so triggered at it and just project onto others so quickly. And we're better able to have a conversation where we can be a lot more curious and understanding, and just understand the perspective of others that are going through it. Because the way I see it, that's the only way to find peace. It's just being able to understand where other people are coming from, similar to finding peace with ourselves. Like if I've got a sub-personality within me that I'm at war with, it means I don't understand them. And my go-to response is, when I don't understand a part of myself, is to judge it, is to push it away, is to, you're not right, you are wrong. But it's because I don't understand what's behind the actions or the motivation, the desires of that part of me. So when I can understand it, it builds a lot more of a foundation of peace between us, because I know, okay, this is what they need, this is what I need, we can work together and cooperate. And I think that just expands outwards on a collective level, and we experience that within thousands of people and how they interact with each other.
What's your relationship with the emotion anger? It's an emotion that men quite struggle with a lot. And for you, speaking about, there was anger that came up against Muslims or your father, various different points within your life. What's your relationship with it? Because for me, I had a very negative relationship with anger, and it's probably something that I'm still working on now. So, for example, my upbringing, I was surrounded with a lot of anger from my father, and the way he reacted and did certain things. For me, I was like, I can't be angry, because if I did, I'd be just like him. So I shut off that emotion, and I wouldn't say shut off, I internalized that emotion. What did you do to kind of build a relationship with anger?
Yeah, I can completely relate to you with your experience with anger. Mine was the exact same thing. Typically, we're going to reject a part of ourselves that reminds us of a part of someone else that we reject as well. So if, for example, you've had a negative experience with anger, let's say your father was unable to regulate and control his anger and channel it and in healthy ways and use it for something good. If you've only ever seen that emotion from a negative in a negative way, it's led to wounding within your experience of it, well, then you're going to perceive anger as a whole as something negative. It's like if I've had a bad experience with someone from a specific race, I may generalize that and go, okay, everyone in that race is bad then. Okay, and we can do the same thing with parts of ourselves through parts of others. So your way of suppressing that part of yourself was to prevent you from being like your father.
And when I would release anger, I'd fucking put myself down so much, because I'm like, oh, why am I doing this? Why I'm being just like him? Yeah. And I just push myself down further and further and further. And it was such a bad thing to show anger.
Yeah, I get you. So I think the best thing I do for people that are struggling with anger is first get them to understand their anger, what their anger is trying to give them. And when I ask people that question, their common response is, it doesn't give me anything. It just gives me more stress. It gives me issues. And then I reframe the question as, what is it trying to give you? And commonly what people may answer is trying to give me a voice. It's trying to protect me. It's trying to keep me safe. It's trying to get someone to hear me so they can understand me, because I don't feel heard and understood. And when I'm not heard or understood, I feel like I'm not important. And if I'm not important, that hurts. Okay? So once people can understand, firstly, what their anger is trying to give them, even if it's not successful, this is looking at the perspective of that part of you. Again, it's like you're accessing your inner anger part of you, and you're just letting that part of you speak and share as to why are you getting angry? Rather than judging yourself going, I'm so stupid, I'm just like my dad, I'm just getting angry all the time. Just getting that part of you to be brutally honest and open as to what their positive intention is for them getting angry. It doesn't matter if there's a positive outcome or not. We already know there's a negative outcome if you're exploring it. All right, we get it. Logically, we get it. But what we want to do is just understand, well, what's the positive intention of it? Then you may find out that information like, okay, it's trying to give me safety, security, have my voice heard, whatever it may be. Once you understand that, you're like, okay, all right, now I can understand why I'm using my anger. And it's actually coming from a good place, even though it's not producing good outcomes. It's coming from a good place. Okay? It's like if I'm a teacher at a school and I see a kid bashing another kid, the first thing I could do is go, you're a bad kid, you're stupid, you're dumb, go to detention, you're expelled from school. Shame the kid. And hey, look, maybe there's a time and a place for that, but what could be a good strategy for this kid to really be able to learn how to control this and get to the root cause of this anger, this manifestation of anger that's rippling out in forms of being violent towards other students, is find out where it's coming from. What's the positive intention for this anger being there? And maybe if you inquire deeper into it, you find out this kid gets bashed himself by his dad at home and he feels really insignificant and small and feels pathetic and worthless as a result of that. And because of how low he feels about himself and his self-worth, his way of increasing his self-worth and feeling more powerful is seeking dominion over other people that are smaller than him. Essentially repeating the same strategy that his father has taught to him, that his father uses to feel more powerful, he does to other people for himself to feel more powerful. Okay, I get it. You're trying to feel powerful, little kid, because you feel like you're a piece of shit. I understand your positive intention. All right, well, what are some other ways that you can feel more powerful? Let's talk a bit about that. Because rather than shaming this kid and making them feel more worthless, all right, let's find a solution as a way to resolve the deeper core issue that they have of feeling like a worthless piece of shit. All right, what could make this child feel more powerful? All right, how about boxing? Learning how to channel and connect to your anger and be competitive when you're fighting other children in a consensual, safe space, monitored by a professional boxing coach. There's one. Okay, what if you felt more powerful by resolving some of the perception that you have towards yourself, the negative perception that you have towards yourself because of the experiences that you had with your father, because your father beat you and he wasn't there and he would work all the time and he abandoned you, whatever it was. So you've made all of that mean that you're not good enough. Okay, maybe we can flip the script on that. Because I know you've taken that personally, but maybe it wasn't your fault, the reason why that happened. Maybe it was because of your father's problems. Maybe because it was certain traumas. Maybe because he was somewhere else and he wasn't able to be there with you. Maybe it wasn't because you're unworthy and not good enough and you're a piece of shit, the reason why your dad beat you. Maybe it wasn't because of that. So changing your perspective of the experience that you had that's fueled this narrative, that's creating this deep sense of pain, that you're then using bashing other people as a way to self-medicate. All right. So it's like getting to the core issue, finding other ways and techniques that you can use to channel it. So for anyone who's experiencing any of that anger, understand that part of you, what the positive intention of that part of you is, what they're trying to achieve. trying to find another way to achieve that exact same outcome. For example, if you want to be heard, learn some communication techniques. Learn how to talk and communicate better so you can be heard. Anger, to raise your voice. I'm raising my voice, the volume, so this person can hear me. But sometimes raising the volume isn't the way for people to hear you. Maybe you got to change the way that you're communicating and talking, and that will resonate with people better for them to hear you. So you can achieve the outcome that you want of being heard, so you can feel important and validated by communicating in a different way, okay? So that's another way. Changing the strategy that you're using to achieve the outcome that anger is trying to give you, and addressing the root cause of where it's coming from. So for example, if the anger is coming from a place of feeling worthless, insecure, resolving that deep issue at its core, flipping the script, updating the memory, changing your perspective of that past experience that's fueled this, and healing it at its core.
That is interesting. Whilst you're speaking about that, it really got me thinking about the times that anger arose in my life. And you're 100% right. When it came to anger for myself, why it came up was because I felt like I wasn't being heard. I felt like I wasn't good enough, and no one cared about me, and that sense of security. So I had to show anger to feel heard. But then as soon as I showed that anger, I put myself down for showing that anger. And I was like, what the fuck? So you've just flipped a switch for me in my head. I was like, wow, okay, this is interesting.
And you can even, if you were to put yourself in your father's shoes, he probably didn't feel heard either. There's probably a lot of things he was going through, and he didn't know how it could be heard. And his way of, it's like a part of him was like inside this cage that would be held in his body. He would quite literally feel this anger, this tension building up in his body. And, we all feel this to a degree. And then out of nowhere, this part of him is just like, I don't feel heard. I don't feel special. I don't feel worthy. I don't feel validated. I don't feel understood, And then out of nowhere, he's like, that's it. Someone see me, someone hear me, someone meet my needs. But it would come out in this really destructive way that, even though it has positive intentions, it doesn't create a positive outcome. So then what happens as a result of that negative outcome? Negative consequences, other people getting hurt, him going, wait a minute, this isn't what I wanted, feeling ashamed of himself, feeling guilty, therefore pushing it back inside. And it's just like this endless cycle of like, hey, I'm out, hey, I'm in, hey, I'm out, hey, I'm in. And it's like this need that this part of him has and is trying to achieve it isn't being achieved, despite how many times it comes out to scream and shout or break something and punch a wall and, destroy a door or, whatever it may be.
This has allowed me to understand my dad a lot better, actually, just you going over this stuff, because I thought I worked through it, and I have a lot of empathy towards my father. As I said, I had a lot of anger, I had a lot of built up resent towards him. But over the last couple of years and doing the work, and today's kind of just cemented my feelings towards him, is I understand that he has a lot of built up stuff and a lot of childhood stuff that he hasn't quite dealt with. And thinking about the times that he releases anger, it's when people aren't listening to him and he's not feeling heard too. So now I have a deeper understanding for him, and I know the listeners will be able to relate to this too, because I'm sure there's a lot of people that go through this, whether that be with their dad, with their mum, like someone within their life that's, they're seen as it's just an angry cunt, they're always angry, they're always spilling hatred and negative energy and stuff like that. So the whole basis of this conversation is seeking to understand. The best way to, build a connection with someone is to understand them.
Bro, this is just to give you an example of how effective, this is. And for everyone listening, it's not to say that you see an angry cunt on the street. It's like, go up to him and understand him and be like a modern day Jesus Christ on the street. Like, it's up to you how much you want to do this. I would suggest really applying it in context that it serves you while also maintaining your energy, because you can't take on everyone's negative energy too much. But one of the world's, he's an ex-FBI hostage negotiator. This guy's name's Chris Voss, and he teaches. He's mainly doing work now with like sales, but he's a great communicator, and he's spoken and negotiated with countless terrorist organizations and criminals and people that have kidnapped people and held them hostage and all this sort of stuff. And his approach was always to understand why they were doing what they were doing. So there's an example of a terrorist, Islamic terrorist that kidnapped someone, I think an American or something like this. I can't remember what country it was. I think maybe it was in the Philippines or something like that. And he said to this terrorist, he goes, "Look, I get why you're doing it. You know, your people have suffered from years of I think it was like colonialism and oppression, and many of your people have died, and you know, that's not fair, you know, and you had to be a young boy growing up in that, seeing that, and that would have been fucked, you know. So I get now you're kidnapping this person to get payback. You want all this money for them to pay back all the death, misery, and suffering that your people have endured, to make it fair." What did the terrorists say? That's right. That's exactly right. Like it's like he just spoke to this person as a human being and got this guy to be like, yeah, that's exactly right. Like that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. And it just made me realize that, you know, everyone doesn't matter what they're doing, there's always a positive intention behind it. Doesn't mean we have to accept it. But there's always something that they're trying to achieve by doing it, and a need that they're trying to meet. And the current strategy that they're using is just a way to meet that need. It doesn't make it right, and it's really important to be able to discern that and have a strong moral compass with this, so that you're not becoming overly empathetic towards everyone. It's like everyone is love and light, and you just let like toxic people in your life to do all this bad stuff to you because it's like, oh, but they're just trying to have their needs met. You know, there's obviously a line with that, but I think that same perspective, if you can apply it to yourself, first of all, with all the shit that you may do, doesn't matter what you do. You know, I've had coaching sessions with people that have committed crimes, and some of them have committed some heinous crimes or done things that they've held a lot of shame for. So much shame. And shame, you know, I get it. It's needed to be able to give us a sense of what's right and wrong. You know, a shameless society will do anything and justify it, you know, and that's not right. So there's a divine reason why we have shame, and it's important to have it. But if we're holding on to it for years and decades, it's just crippling us in our health, and it's just not serving us anymore to hold. It's like, all right, we got the message. We've already got the message. We're still holding on to it. Or if we're using shame towards things that it's like, come on, like it's okay. Like it's not the end of the world that you watched porn again. You know, you had a relapse on your addiction. Like, you know, in fact, it may put you in a bit of a cycle that refuels the addiction. Like there's times when it may not serve you to inflict yourself with so much shame after something, you know. Again, we have to have a compass of discerning what's a healthy degree of it. But the best thing that you can do is just understand, like, what is that part of you trying to get? What are they trying to achieve? What are they trying to get out of it? Like, what's their positive intention behind it? And when you answer these questions, don't answer them logically. Hop into the perspective of them and just answer intuitively from that place. And then you may uncover some answers that can give you a deeper insight as to yourself. And when you can understand yourself a lot more, you can stand yourself a lot more. When you can stand yourself, then you can build a connection of what your needs are, how you can meet them in better, healthy ways, how you can sort yourself out a lot better, how you can take responsibility for your own life, how if you're a man or woman, but whatever, if you're a man, how you can be a man to own your own shit and acknowledge your own shadows, and then from those shadows and you understanding them, learn how to integrate them, how to meet their needs so they don't ripple out in all these dark ways that are just creating turmoil and stress and issues in your life. And you can be a better leader of yourself, and then that can then transfer into all other areas, your relationship, being a father, being a child, your work, your businesses, your whatever. It doesn't matter what you're doing. You can then start to share that connection that you formed with yourself by connecting with all these other people more authentically.
What's your connection like with your dad? Is that a relationship you've reconciled?
A lot more than what it has been, for sure. I had a really big breakthrough with him. I think it was early this year or last year. It was the first time he opened up to me and acknowledged that for so long he's been wearing a mask. And that was really powerful for me, hearing that. At the moment now, my relationship with my dad, it's not that close. Like, I'm not that close with him. Like, I accept him. I'm not hell-bent on him needing to be a certain way. I feel like at the moment now, it feels like I've just accepted it for what it is for now without trying to change it, without forcing it to be something that's like, yay, dad and son. Like, I think for me that boat has sailed and I've accepted that. I'm at a point in my life where I'm 32 years old. Like, like I don't need what I needed when I was 13, 14, 15, 16. Like I don't need that now. I'm not resentful now that I didn't get it. So for me now, I think just accepting where he's at, the kind of life he wants to live, but also where I'm at now, and not feeling overly responsible at the moment to need to have like a super close relationship with him. I think the most important thing for me right now is I've accepted him for who he is. I'm not holding on to anger towards him or anything, and that for me is given me a lot of peace inside, and that's the best thing. And I think this is important for anyone listening, because a lot of the work I do, and you may experience with any type of shadow work or inner child work, is doing healing with your mother wound and your father wound. And what the goal is of this sort of healing work in regards to our mother and father is reaching a point of accepting them as your mother and your father. Like, this is your mother and your father, and accepting that. Now, accepting that, sometimes it gets misconstrued. Like, does that mean I have to accept all the bad things that they've done to me and therefore opening a door for it to happen again? Does this mean I have to accept them so that they're in my life a lot and I have to see them a lot and have a lovey-dovey relationship? No, it's accepting them and healing your relationship with them on a soul level. Okay, because if you have resentment, anger, hatred towards your parents, you're the one who's carrying that wherever you are. That's what's driving issues that you may have with addictions, with your relationships, your relationship with money, what your fears, doubts, insecurities. It may be manifesting from those core wounds. So therefore, it all comes down to your relationship with yourself and how it's affecting your relationship with yourself. So by you healing your relationship with your parents on a soul level internally within you, the byproduct is you're improving your relationship with yourself. Even if you don't, it's not required for you to need to have like a positive relationship with them in a physical form. That's why for people whose parents have already passed away, died, they live in another country, you can do a lot of healing in regards to your mother and your father without them physically being there. So yeah.
I did a podcast recently, and the guest, their father recently passed, and he said, I've never had a stronger connection with my dad until he passed away. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Why so? Why do you think that it takes something like that to build a relationship with someone? Is it because now within yourself you're actually taking the time to reflect and think through it and maybe have empathy and gratitude towards that person?
Yeah. I can definitely see how that would be a part of it. Just putting myself in the shoes if I was going through something like that. I think a big part of that, it's like once they die, it's like you can't expect to get anything from them. So if there's like a wounded inner child in you, in myself, a young boy in myself who's like, Dad, you should have been there more for me. You should have supported us more financially. You should have taught me sports and taught me about money at a young age. You should have been there to help me. Like, you should have done that. That's why I'm not where I am right now in life, because of you. Like, you shouldn't be there, and you're still not there now. Let's say that's happening deeply, unconsciously within me. Once he dies, I can't think that anymore. Like, I haven't got someone there to point a finger and be like, that's the reason why I'm like this now. He's dead. He's passed away. So it's like, at that point, it's like the expectations that a part of me may have to expect my dad to come back and heal those stress response loops that are still open, the trauma that has been open, that hasn't been closed, that hasn't been resolved. I can't expect that to happen anymore because he's actually dead. He's not here anymore. He's passed. So it's like, at that time, it's like, I feel like it may be a lot easier to just accept your father for who he is. And then from that point, let go of that resentment, those expectations for him to come and do something to heal you in some way, to resolve something that was an issue that he was a part of within our past. It's like, he's gone now. It's up to me now. Like, it's all me. And I feel like once that point has occurred, it makes it a lot easier for you to just see your dad for who they really were all along. Like a human who, like all of us, is going to die one day. You know, so that's the way I would explain it from if I was experiencing that personally.
Yeah. For me, my father's still here, but the big thing that helped me reconnect with myself and the relationship with him, I guess coming from my point of view, is understanding that he was just doing the best with the tools that he has, and he doesn't have the best, tool bag. So how is he meant to turn up as the best version of himself if he hasn't done the work and dealt with all that stuff? Instead of me going, oh, you're such a bad person, you've done all these things, it's like, no, he just didn't have the tools. So how can I be angry at someone that doesn't have the tools?
That's very true, bro. Yeah. It's like my dad's dad, my grandfather, he died when my dad was like 12 or something. He wasn't really around much with my father when my father was a kid. He was working a lot, That's what I've heard from my dad. So my dad didn't really have a dad. So it's like, how was he supposed to know what it was like to be a dad from his experience? And that realization was like, okay, well, I didn't really have a dad. I don't have many memories with my dad when I was young, and he was always in and out of my life growing up. But I'm aware of that now. I'm conscious of it now. And I'm conscious of what can be the byproduct of an experience like that and how I may pass that down to my future child. So I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to repeat that because I know how much it sucks and how painful it is. And I don't want my descendants to have to be able to carry this for generations.
So do you believe in generational trauma?
Yeah, I believe in it, yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I believe in it. I believe that if you're someone who experienced a certain amount, if you had certain experiences in life, that shapes your worldview. Now, traumatic experiences, wounding experiences, whether it's an acute trauma or developmental traumas that gradually compound into higher amounts of stress being trapped in the body, there's like a conceptual part of that's tied into that effect on our body that influences how we see the world, right? Influences how we see people, how we see women, how we see men. If you've experienced a lot of trauma experiences with your mother, that's going to shape and shift your whole perception of women. If it's with your father, it's going to shape and shift your whole perspective of men, how you perceive your own masculinity, all these things. So it really begins to distort, generalize reality. And if you've got a child and if you still hold that same reality and that same worldview, well, then that's going to influence the worldview of this child, and they may take on a lot of that and just believe it to be true, or through their direct experiences with you, it may influence them to have the exact same experiences. Like if you, for example, all right, so you had this negative relationship with anger, you've learned how to have a better relationship with it, channel it in better ways, find your own tools. Let's say you didn't do that. Let's say you didn't go on this journey. Let's say you just kept things going on autopilot, like unfortunately what a lot of people get trapped in. Let's say you had a child and every time your child does something, you get angry and you do the same thing. They're going to have now the same perspective of anger. they're going to now suppress their anger within them. And it's going to outburst at random moments of the general day-to-day life. But if they see you now, you've got a better relationship with anger, they're going to be like, okay, anger isn't all that bad. There's good things to do with it. Like, for example, there's a moment I felt really safe when my dad got angry. Why? Because there was some creepy guy at the playground that, you know, tried to talk to me. My dad went up to him and said something to him, and that actually made me feel safe. So I know now anger can be used to set boundaries. Okay, I have a better worldview of anger. But if a child hasn't seen that and everything's negative with anger, well, then you're passing that down to them, and they may pass it down to their kid, and who knows how long it may go on until someone within that within the descendants can go, wait a minute, there's this podcast called the Betar Project. Let me listen to that. There's some guy talking about anger here. Oh my God, new connection formed. So everyone listening, you could very well be that descendant from your ancestral line that's ready to create that shift and change in your life, so it doesn't need to be passed on to the next generation.
Man, I love your approach when it comes to, you know, speaking about healing and therapy. Especially with social media content, like the humor, the comedy side of things. I think it's very much so needed, especially in the space where, for example, men, where it's quite daunting to do this work, to seek out help, because it's seen as such a serious side of things and getting into emotions and stuff like that. But to come across your content and the way that you approach it, like you take the piss out of all the different types of therapy and the spiritual woo-woos and all that stuff, it's like, it's a more relatable, humanized approach to it. What made you go down that path and approach it that way?
I'm just a funny cunt.
Yeah, you are.
Bro, a few different reasons. First of all, I just love taking the piss out of anything. You know, I grew up in a school where every single lunchtime it was on. You know, you had to have a strong ego to be able to cop all the verbal attacks on every single part of you, your appearance, your personality, everything.
So do you feel like it was a coping mechanism, the humor side of you?
Look, the whole coping mechanism side, I think if we really get into it, gratitude can be a coping mechanism. You know, starting a podcast can be anything can be labeled as a coping mechanism. I'm using a podcast to make me feel better about myself and like I'm important. Like we can have that perspective on anything. Yeah, of course, it makes me feel better when I do it. But there was obviously a negative side to it, that it can be directed in the form of bullying and things like that. So it's learning how to channel it in a way that's going to support the cause of the rising consciousness on earth. So I've decided to embrace my inner cunt, because I do have an inner cunt in me, and I'm not going to sit here and act like I don't.
Like Bob yesterday in that video.
Bob's a fucking cunt. So I've got an inner cunt in me. He likes to take the piss out of shit, and that's his way of expressing himself. Now, I know my intentions are good. It's coming from a good place, and it's creating positive outcomes. Just like you said, I get a lot of clients from it. A lot of people laugh. It brings a lot of laughter. Not for everyone. Some people take it personally, whatever, but I can't please everyone. Not everyone has the same sense of humor, just like anyone, any comedian or anyone for that matter. So I know it's coming from a good place. I found a way to channel that part of me that I had to adapt to the circumstances that I was in when I was young and use it in a healthy way now. So that's one reason why. And another reason why, laughter is healing. It's healing. When you laugh, your body goes into this like, it's like this release of energy. You feel good afterwards. Laughter is healing. And I think like from an outside perspective, if I was to observe like the healing industry now, like, or just different ways to go about self-development, I'm obviously going to kind of exaggerate it a little bit, but you got these like really cringy life coaches. It's like, you can be the best version of yourself. And maybe some of my content comes across in that way, especially some of my ads and things like that. So there's that, it's a bit cringy. It's like, all right, come on, Troy.
But that's the point of it though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Grab attention.
Yeah. So there's that. Then there's like the overly serious side of it. And there's a time and a place for it. If I'm holding space for someone, I'm not there just taking the piss out of them the whole time. I'm definitely accessing a different part of me for that. But sometimes it can be so serious. And I think if you're getting so warped in the over seriousness of healing and you don't have the flexibility to be able to experience healing in different ways, like having fun, having a laugh as well, and being serious sometimes, if it's just overly serious the whole time, is that what you want out of healing? Is that what you want to get out of it? Is that your goal? If it is your goal, cool. But for some people, they're not getting into healing to become overly serious or to become spiritual for that matter, and be like, they're just getting into it just to be themselves, like just to connect with them, just to be who they are. And whatever that is, that's going to be their own unique individual expression. So that's another reason why it's healing in itself. And I think it's a great way for education, for people to learn different things, for people to get their own realizations about certain things. I find it like if I can convey a message that's going to support people and get them to laugh at the same time, that's awesome. That's incredible. What a gift! Like I'm giving that I'm so proud of. I'll be fucking so proud to make people laugh and get them to learn things and get people to have realizations and not take life too seriously. You know, like if I'm doing that on this earth, great. I'm happy with that. I'm happy. And if I can make some money along the journey and meet new people, even fucking better. You know what I mean? So that's the way I see it.
Keep giving that gift, because I can see it's definitely helping a lot of people. And when I came across your content, I'm like, this guy's awesome. I got to have a chat with him, because not many people are like you that bring humor into this space, into this healing space. And I wanted to ask, we're speaking a lot about healing today. Are we all wounded?
Are we all wounded? It depends what the word wounded means to you. You know, I think if ever I use the word wounded, I definitely don't mean it from a context like you're crippled and you are defected and, you know, like, like a little golem or whatever it is. Like, you know, it's like, I'm a wounded person. Like, look, I definitely think that we've all experienced some degree of pain and suffering in our lives, to a degree. You know, there's definitely a degree of it. And I think, no one leaves the past experiences that they've had in their childhood, especially at a time where we're just so vulnerable and we take pretty much everything personally. And you know, a lot of us are just born into these circumstances that we didn't really choose, unless, you know, you believe in, you know, my angel chose this life for me or whatever it was. And, you know, we're just doing the best that we can to adapt to these circumstances that we're in to try and have our basic human needs met so that we can survive, be loved and accepted. And sometimes in that period of time, we experience some pain, we experience some suffering. And for some of us, a lot of that pain is still being held in our bodies because we haven't had that capacity, that time, that space, that space of safety where we could be like, okay, let me just process what the hell just happened in the last 30 years, because maybe it's just been a repetitive cycle of stress that's reinforced that pain that's been in my body. And for a lot of people, we've all got some of this in our bodies to a degree, and it's not a bad thing. It's like with the inquiry of every single one of these wounds that we have, there's a gold mine of wisdom, of lessons, of different ways of understanding ourselves, of understanding life, and then from that being able to understand others. So I think it's, you know, actually a blessing to a degree, because these wounds give us the opportunity to discover more about ourselves and therefore making us more understanding of who we are and life itself, and gives us a different aspect to life that isn't all rainbows and fairies and flowers, and adds a bit more depth to it, I find. And so I think we've all got something to a degree. I'm not going to use the word trauma. I think that's a completely different category. But we've all experienced some level of pain and suffering in our lives, and sometimes it's still held in our bodies. And it's all just there to give us an opportunity to learn more about ourselves and Yeah.
Charles, we have a closing tradition on the podcast where the previous guest leaves a question for the next guest without knowing who it is. So the question for you today is, what will your legacy be?
What will my legacy be? Okay. I think my legacy will be bringing joy, bringing laughter, connecting people together, and inspiring people to just be themselves. That's what I think it is. That's what I think my legacy is going to be. Yeah.
You're definitely doing that.
Thanks, man. I know it's happening. I'm already legacizing.
Man, thank you so much for making the trip out here. This has been a very interesting and great conversation. I've learned a lot myself. I know the listeners are going to take a lot from this as well.
Okay.
If they want to follow you, where's the best place to follow you?
So Instagram, Charles Myssy. My last name's MYSSY. Instagram's where the majority of my content is. I've got a YouTube channel as well, Charles Myssy. Not too much happening there, but I've got some videos there, and I'm creating
Some travel stuff, man.
Eventually, I'm going to post up some more travel stuff there. If anyone's interested in doing any of my workshops, so I do an inner child workshop every 3 weeks. If you go on my Instagram, you can click my bio and you can register for that. It's $67. It goes for 3 hours. It's a great immersive experience for you to just get a first-hand heartfelt experience of what it's like to go through that process, guided by me. If you want to meet me in person, I do the drums every Sunday, Bondi Beach, from 4 o'clock onwards till sunset. It's going to be going off over summer, so definitely come and check that out. Come and say hi, introduce yourself. And yeah, that's pretty much. Otherwise, you might see me walking around Bondi walking my dog, Dr. Dre.
Charles, thank you, man.
Thank you, brother.